Welcome to Big Blend Radio's Toast to the Arts Show, where we celebrate books, music, visual, and the performing arts. Welcome, everybody. Today I'm excited to introduce award-winning author Joseph Bauer on the show. I don't know if he's a relative of Jack Bauer. Who knows? You remember that TV show? Hey, I'm all for that. But he's joining us here to talk about his latest novel. It's called Sailing for Grace. It is out now through Running Wild Press, and many of you may know him from his Patriot book series. It's a three-part series that's also out now. And I find this really fascinating because we're going to talk about immigration. This is something that's a hot topic right now, and I don't think it's going to go away. But I find this interesting also because Joseph was an corporate attorney. And so when we start looking at fine print and laws, I think this really helps too. So welcome to the show, Joseph. How are you?
I'm very good, Lisa. I'm very pleased to be with you and your audience.
Well, glad to have you here because I think it's great that you wrote a novel that shows humanity and relationships and the story of people, because I think right now we look at immigrations as numbers, people in numbers, and the numbers aren't accurate as far as I'm concerned because there's legal, there's illegal, there's different things. And I don't know. It's, my mom, Nancy, and I, who run this, wonderful Big Blend show and magazines, we've lived in different countries. We've been immigrants, and, I know what it's like to be an immigrant. And it's kind of an interesting thing how you get treated. And so I think this is timely. Did you kind of plan this on time?
Well, I had written the three military espionage series that you called the Patriot series.
Mm-hmm.
And I regret that name, Patriot, because it became, after I wrote the books, kind of a charged term.
Yeah.
But put that to one side. I had an editor after the third book who said, your books are really good. Your writing is very good, but can you get off of this military espionage theme and get to something a little more socially relevant? And it made me think, and I had been to Newport, Rhode Island many years ago and was struck by the history. You felt like you were there getting off of the Mayflower.
Mm.
And the sailing, it's a very big sailing community, and it's not much of a boating community. Real diehard sailors, they're kind of on one divide, and they don't want to be in a speedboat. They want
Right.
to be on these yachts and big sailboats. And I had a friend who said, "Would you like to get on one?" And I said, "Oh, I would love that." Well, we didn't sail, but I was able to walk this huge yacht, and I was just stunned. And then taking that memory into the editor's comment many years later, I thought, well, immigration is not a very big issue in Newport, Rhode Island, but I was struck by the people I met there. Many were
Mm-hmm.
quite progressive in their thinking. And it came to me that in, in, in marriages, even very good ones, um, there's frequently discord around politics.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I would take that fact and blend it with the concept of a older couple um, who loved each other very much and loved the ocean together and had been extremely successful, all honestly. He didn't make his money selling stocks and bonds. He made it making things as a manufacturer. And now he was looking forward to retirement and sailing with his politically active wife. And he thought, well, when I have her out there on the ocean, she can't be off to some political rally. Her name was Grace. But so I sketched out a plot where she would be dying and knowing it, and asking him uh, to forego his own political rigidity and do something for her and take up her latest cause, which was the separation of families at the southern border.
Mm.
Now, that, of course, was a very hot, still is, but it came to a real crescendo in 2017 and 18. And that's when I was thinking about writing this book. And
Mm.
I did see, as many authors do, I read voraciously, I read lots of newspapers to get ideas, and I read about a nun whose real name was Sister Norma in Texas, who had dedicated her life at that time to helping the parents and the children who were being separated.
Mm.
Um, and she became the model in my own mind for Sister Hope Annie in my novel. She's not the protagonist, but she is the enabler for the protagonist, who is the older husband, the stodgy, conservative, large, fairly awkward man. Uh,
Mm.
and so I don't know exactly, I've strayed away from your question. Authors
No,
will,
I just find it, I was just saying it's interesting because it's still such a big topic in regards to who's illegal, what's legal. You know, we're based out of Tucson, Arizona,
that's,
and we travel full time, but we're on our way home for a little bit. And the border is a big conversation
it
and
is.
issue and an issue. There's many issues that revolve around this border: walls, children getting separated, dreamers, non-dreamers, legals, illegals. And I've driven the back roads of Arizona, you know, and I know El Paso is part of this. You know, Juarez is
Yep.
notoriously one of the most dangerous cities in, you know, Mexico. We also used to live in Mexico, and
Mm-hmm.
so, you know, we travel a lot. Obviously, it's kind of just who we are. We're gypsies, and we understand the power of connectivity with fellow humans and just understanding them where they are at. So what happens on the news is always kind of blinding in that these numbers versus humans. And that's what I love about what you've done is put humanity at the forefront, but also challenged ideals to make people think in different ways that they may not, because people have gotten become very rigid in our country right now.
Oh,
And
thank you.
you know,
Oh, you're
that's
so
the
right,
thing.
Lisa. And um, I always begin the process with a lot of research.
Mm.
I do some research to get a feeling, well, can I understand what I'm researching so that I can write about it well? And then I do an outline, a very small one.
Mm.
And then before I begin the writing, I do extensive research. And in this case, um, I was amazed at the very point you're making that the numbers that you hear thrown about are the most charitable thing you could say about them is that they're always misleading.
Mhm.
The more accurate thing you can say about them is that they're just wrong. And they do center on the very points you're making,
Mhm.
illegal versus legal. And I'm writing in my novel about the well publicized but inaccurately described caravans of thousands of individuals and families, mostly families, who in it didn't start in 2017. It started much earlier. Um, there were caravans during the Obama administration,
Mhm. Yep.
but Mr. Trump decided to make it a highly charged political issue
Mhm.
when they reemerged in 2017. When he was running, there wasn't a large caravan issue in 16, but he made his famous, I'm going to build a wall. And he was really talking about the conventional notion of the illegal immigrant who is brought by coyote
Yep.
or someone being paid
Mm-hmm.
or swindling these.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry about that buzzing. Somebody keeps texting me.
Oh, I thought it was a dog
You know what
or
I'm
a
going to
bird.
do? I'm going to put the phone off that way. Okay.
I was like, oh, what kind of dog do you have?
Oh, I have a beautiful dog, and she's here with me.
Oh, okay,
She's
cool.
always with me when I write.
Oh,
But
right. That's awesome.
Trump was originally talking um, relatively correctly about the illegal entry or attempted
Mm-hmm.
illegal entry of very small groups and often just bands of individuals. And they're trying to get to a better life. All of them
Yes.
are. But they're being taken across the river and evading border security. They're not presenting themselves with a claim of asylum.
Right.
The huge difference on this legal versus illegal is the person attempting to make entry, presenting himself, herself, his family, her family at a border crossing with a request that asylum be granted. That is not an illegal attempt.
Right.
That's a
Mm-hmm.
completely legal attempt. And
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't even mention something that I like to mention, which is that every year there are hundreds of people who come in, they have money, they come in from Asia, they come in from
Mm-hmm.
uh, hostilities in Eastern Europe,
Mm-hmm.
they land at Chicago O'Hare Airport, they don't have a passport. Some of them sneak onto the plane with a fake passport in Romania or wherever, and they present themselves at the airport to any uniformed employee of the United States government, which can be a TSA employee.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, I'm presenting myself. My passport is fake. I got on the plane. I'm here. I'm being pursued because of my political beliefs in China,
Mm-hmm.
wherever, and I want asylum. That's perfectly legal.
Mm-hmm.
The person is
Fleeing
paperwork
from something.
paperwork is completed, and they are directed. Well, okay, do you have a place to stay? And these are normally people of means, so they say, "Oh, I'll stay in a hotel." They say, "Fine," and we will be in touch with you about appearing before an immigration law judge, who are not just at the southern border; they're all over the country. And that person gets a chance to prove by reasonable preponderance of evidence that yes, I'm being, if I go back, I will be put in jail purely because I am opposing a dictator over there in
Mm-hmm.
a local municipality. And there's hundreds of these a year, and they're non-controversial. But when we have large numbers coming from Central America, fleeing gangs, fleeing religious persecution,
Mm-hmm.
mainly fleeing complete lawlessness,
Right.
what I feature in my book with the country
Mm-hmm.
of Honduras.
Mm.
And I hope Hondurans will not be offended by my description of that country. I researched it very extensively. It was fascinating to me because it essentially, unlike America, it has no functioning federal government. It has territories
Mm-hmm.
instead of states, quite a
It,
number of them. But the governments in those territories are completely corrupt or even non-existent. And so it's run by neighborhood gangs in each
mm-hmm.
community and rural area everywhere. And they can be vicious and brutal towards women, towards children. And that is the principal reason for the fleeing of that country in particular,
Mm-hmm.
Honduras, which was where about at least half of all of the asylum seekers since 2017 have come from.
Mm.
Um, so Um, as I
You've
explained,
got to think about, I mean, there's the asylum seekers that have some funds, right? It's a different thing. When we left South Africa, Nancy, my mom, had one of the last independent magazines, and things had changed, and broadcasting and media was getting taken over, and it was time as American citizens to get the heck out, and quickly. I mean, so fast that I lost my passport, which I found on the plane, but don't tell anybody. The secret compartment in my handbag. But we couldn't. We had to pretend we were going on vacation to get out that fast. You know, we weren't citizens, but we're citizens of America. And they managed to get me a passport from DC to Port Elizabeth, South Africa within 72 hours because of what was going down. And so we get there, we finally get well, we ended up in England for a bit. We didn't know what we were doing, but we couldn't take everything out. So she gave all her attorney everything. She paid off all her employees. I think she had 13 at the time, 6 months salary each. We gave everything in the house to her maid and gardener because they got burned down, and that's a whole other story. Their homes got burned down, and it's a crazy long story. But anyway, to get over here, we came like, yay, we can afford a McDonald's burger maybe, but we started over. But when we went to reinstate our Social Security, which we had our numbers and everything, but you have to do this process, they try to give us refugee money, and we're like, no, we got jobs, man. We got and the jobs didn't last very long. We went right back into what we do within 2 years. So I mean, we worked hard, and you have this feeling of doing, the great American thing, even though we're American. It was just kind of different coming in. You
yes,
have these ideals, and we were completely, just like anyone coming over, shell shocked, in like cultural shock. Like it was just, why do you have 10 butters on the shelf in the grocery store? Like, what are all these things for? There's, how much rice do you need? Isn't there, rice is rice? So it was really kind of a culture shock. But there's a it's important to talk about this because people are fleeing for so many reasons from so many countries. And yes, there needs to be a way to handle it, not necessarily separating kids and putting them in pizza bags.
right,
And that was a cruel thing, which I like that you've got this about in your book about families being separated, husbands and wives getting separated, some on one side of the border, some on the other. But if we don't get things together and bring some humanity to it, which our country was always, bring us, you're weak and all of that, you're strong, you're weak.
yes,
And it shouldn't be that you have to have money to get in as the asylum seekers, because what about the families? What about the kids? It's not the kids' fault.
right,
And
and
I'm,
yeah,
that's Grace, right? I'm sorry, I'm right there with Grace,
that's Grace,
but
that's Grace,
I'm with
and
Grace.
it's many Americans, most, a great majority of Americans, when they learned, and they didn't know it was happening for quite a long time,
Mm.
because the Trump administration acted without disclosing it. They did a test period to see what would be, could they handle the separation of families? Where would they put the children? They wanted to see if they could manage it. They did it for about 5 months. Over 3,000 children were separated from their parents, and no one in the country knew about it. The press didn't pick up on it for some reason until a formal announcement was made by the Attorney General, and I have the date in the book, uh, exactly when he announced the so-called zero tolerance. That was a code name for family separation. They should have just said, we're announcing family separation. But when they announced this new policy, the reporters got on it, went down there, and learned that what that meant was that under this program, even if you had legally applied for asylum at a designated port of entry, which El Paso is one, for the first time, the Border Patrol officials were able to summarily reject the adult's application and immediately turn them back out onto the other side of the border while keeping the children. And it was intended to be a deterrence. And the president, former president, was very clear about that. He said, well, this is because they won't come up again anymore if they know they're going to lose their children trying. It was very cruel and inhumane, and the country rose up very promptly.
Mhm.
And within 6 weeks, he had to rescind the policy. Now, unfortunately, there were still many families separated after that.
Mm.
And who knows the motivation of the individuals. But I do want to point out, and I've had already, some feedback from the book that I'm unrealistic in describing some of the Border Patrol officials as being very good people and very humane. And I don't believe that. I believe that in every group, you're going to have excellent moral people, and you're
Yeah.
probably going to have a few that are not. But these men and women are following the law and the orders that they're given. So that was eye-opening to me. But I also wanted to,
There are good border, but I know for a fact.
yeah.
I don't, because, and they're also laying their life on the line every single day in ways they're dealing with cartels, they're dealing with drug dealers coming through illegal trafficking of wildlife, humans, and,
Oh,
ammunition. I mean, if and so event, and it's, you can't say it's the same thing as where everybody wants to just shut down all the police
exactly.
force. It's like, come on now, there's a balance that needs to be
Oh,
had
it's
on both sides.
very comparable to that
Hmm.
analogy. Um, I wanted people to be a little educated by the book. Now, I'm not
Hmm.
trying to be a college professor, but people ask me, well, what was your purpose? What do you want from the reader? I said, well, I hope that the reader will feel that the book is about 10% inspiration, 20% education, and 100% entertaining.
Yes, that's storytelling is one of the most powerful tools we have to have understanding, to create understanding. The arts do. We always talk about
Oh,
this on
you're
our
right.
show.
I,
The arts tell the truth in history. They tell the psyche of the people of what's going on, and it also shows how we repeat ourselves. Uh, what I also say is so important about this is, again, you're putting in the humanity of all sides, right? Of all sides. Everybody's having to come together and go, okay, well, this is my belief, and now I'm going to have to kind of change it and have to have that dialogue. So when you're reading it, it's your own personal pace, which I know this will be a good movie, but I think there's something about having your own personal read to make changes on your own without anybody wagging a finger in your face. Like all these arguments, people drawing line in the sand and all of that, it doesn't work because we're also animals, and animals have been moving. Humans are nomadic. We are that. I mean, that's what Nancy and I are, 100% nomads. And look at how our world has gone from ancient nomads, better not say gypsies, but we're around Halloween as we're recording this, but we're not flim flam either. Don't do that. But we have been nomadic. Our ancestral people of this country have been nomadic between Canada and Mexico. This has been going on for years.
Absolutely.
And so it's actually part of our DNA, I believe, to travel to the places of our ancestry. Even you can do all you want to do on DNA, but it's there. And if you read history like of the ancestral people here, the indigenous people of this country, right? And okay, so now we have our African Americans who were just brought here. Talk about where were the Border Patrol for that? Thank you very much. To stop slavery, right? So anyway,
No,
you're
you're
getting me
right.
all
You're right.
you're
But you
getting
make
me
such a
riled up.
but you make such an interesting point about humans being animals, and we are adaptive. And
Hmm.
the history of immigration, as you're really saying, is human beings adapting to their environment to survive and to prosper and to
Yes.
reproduce.
Hmm.
And there have been many, many drivers of immigration over the history of course, the world, but I'm thinking about the United States. the very first act of Congress, the first Congress in 1797.
Well done. You see, you're the attorney. See, I
Well,
just get
yeah,
all like riled up.
and I might have
You
that date
keep it
wrong,
nice.
but I
Yeah,
have it
but
in
you
my
got it.
research.
You
The,
maintain calm.
the very first act of Congress was a law for the naturalization of citizens.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't never use the word immigration, and that word was not used in the Constitution or in any of the amendments.
Hmm.
It may in the future because it's become such a term, but there was an acceptance right from the beginning.
Yeah.
We need people, we want people, and the unusual and a little, well, troubling, uncomfortable fact is that that law extended completely open borders, but to one group, white Europeans, the very
Oh,
first act of Congress.
I
So
didn't know that.
the first Congress, and if you infer from that, the founders, they anticipated we'd have a white country, and they were welcoming to anyone from Europe who was white. Now, it didn't
Huh.
take long before they became unwelcoming even to some whites. There was
Oh,
unbelievable,
the Irish.
Irish
Mm-hmm.
and Germans, but especially the Irish in the early 19th century and into the midterm. And do you know, there was actually family separation way before what we are experiencing now. There was something in the 1830s, might have been the 1820s. Again, I keep my research
Mm.
in binders, and I could go, and if I had 2 hours, I'd go look it
Yeah.
up. But uh, they were called orphan trains.
I was gonna bring that up. The orphan. You see, this we're doing it
That,
now, and
well,
it would.
I
Mm.
might do a novel about that because
Oh, I hope so.
it would be so interesting and very illuminating to people who had never heard about it. And what it
Mm.
was let's get the Catholics out of the big cities. There was terrible anti-Catholic sentiment in the country. And that meant the Irish immigrants and the Italian immigrants principally. And over 200,000, it's been documented, children were taken from their parents and put on orphan trains and sent out to the West. They didn't want the parents to go because they were working and adding to the economy. But they did not want their children to stay and reproduce and have more Catholics. Isn't that amazing?
Well,
And
this kind of goes with now because when you're talking about the families being separated now, okay, and there's I mean in what you're talking about the orphaning there's so much of that happening outside of this country too. They were doing it in Ireland. Look at the Magdalene laundries and everything there.
yeah,
And I had a friend in Kenya when I was a little girl. My mom taught the nuns at a convent. They were uh, the nuns that can't get outside. Now I'm getting in trouble by the Catholics.
cloistered.
Carmelite, cloistered nuns, and they were the
Yeah,
Carmelites. And so
yeah,
cloistered nuns, the barefoot ones too. So they weren't able to go out except for mail. They grew their own food and everything. And anyway, Sister Margaret, when my mom was teaching painting to them, because she's a wildlife artist primarily, was teaching them and had to get blessed by the papal nunciate who flew in to do a ceremony and then bless my mom. And anyway, it's a whole thing.
very
Sister
interesting.
Margaret turns out to be friends of a past advertising client of mine back in the 90s when we started our magazine back in San Diego. I'm visiting a client and she goes, Lisa, you could really help me send this package to Kenya since you live there. And I said, well, good luck with that. I mean, if it's got anything good in there, it's going to get taken. Turns out her best friend from high school in Pennsylvania, I think it was Pittsburgh, was Sister Margaret. This is crazy, right? And
Yeah,
I'm like, we're all in tears about this. That's a small world thing. But Sister Margaret got taken. They were friends in as teens. And at 16 years old, because she was um, an illegitimate kid. She got put into the convent and taken as an orphan because of that. And then they sent her to Kenya in the and made her become a nun
Oh,
because of that. So what you're talking about is we've been doing, I mean, this is some
yeah,
crazy stuff. I mean, there's so
yeah,
many stories of this. You
yeah.
have to do this other book.
Well,
But we
and
got
I
to
have
promote this one first, everyone.
a technical note. I have a message coming on my screen, and it says, "Failed to enable virtual background.
Don't
Your
worry about
video
it.
has been turned off." I can just
No,
forget.
you're right here. Don't worry about
Okay,
it. You're
great.
right here.
Well,
But no,
and
you're
Lisa,
here.
of course, the other one that's obvious, but we don't identify with it enough. Slavery involved so much family separation. I mean, it had so many horrific aspects. There wasn't anything good you could possibly say about the institution of slavery. But we focus on the beatings and the involuntary servitude aspect and the basic just treating
Yeah.
people as if they're not human. But we overlooked the terrible pain of family separation that was part and parcel of it. Because in this city, Charleston, they would get off those boats and the slave traders would say, "Here's who I have to sell."
Mm-hmm.
And there's this strong man and a strong woman. And then there's a skinny little boy and a skinny little girl. And the slave purchaser says, "I'll take the adults. I don't want the kids." And you'd have that. That's family separation.
And then if you didn't have a kid, you take him. And then how about the women slaves who ended up having to, be with the man of the house?
Oh, yeah.
And now there, that's a whole other,
Oh, yeah.
let's
Just
sweep
terrible.
that under there. But this
Right.
separation, so I want to go back to Honduras, right?
Yeah.
This and these families that have been split, and we have kids ending up over the border and their parents not being there, and I mean, this has been going on since the 70s or 80s, and basically is farms are using these kids as workers because farmers don't have the big families like they used to, and corporations are doing this, not
Oh,
mom
yes.
and pop. These kids are being used in these farms. They don't know where their parents are. Aren't they lucky? They dangle this financial carrot and make them owe the company store. Does that sound familiar?
It does. And it may surprise you that in my own belief system, because I did work for my prior life, although I love being a writer so much more than I enjoyed being a lawyer.
Mm,
I thought I was working pretty hard as a lawyer. I wasn't working that hard. Writing is much harder, but
yeah,
more
yeah.
satisfying. But what I was going to say is that I believe that the key to correcting the entire immigration issue will be business America, corporate America. With the money, they have to fund or defund politicians who are willing to deal with immigration sensibly and in an economics sense, because every economist will tell you immigrants in large numbers add to the economy.
Big time.
They do not commit crime. In fact, they commit crime at far lower rates, less than half of native born people, in any age group you want to look at. But of course, most crimes are unfortunately committed, no matter what race, no matter what you're standing,
You put a
are
group of
men
people in one place, something's going to happen. I
but
mean, come on.
males between 18 and 30 commit a huge percentage of quote offenses of all
Hmm.
kind. Native born Americans in that age group commit 3 to 5 times as many offenses adjusted for population as immigrants of all kind, whether you want to call them legal or illegal, documented. Now, that's another term, documented and undocumented, that I should mention because, as I do explain in the book, you hear this huge number. There's 11 million illegal immigrants in the country. There's 15 million. Former President Trump says, I think it's a lot more than that, really. Well, he's talking, the largest number you can come up with would be that would apply to the so-called undocumented person. This is a person from wherever in the world. Most of them in this country are from either Mexico or Central America. And they're undocumented. Why? They came in legally with their parents or the parents, the adults, on the H-1B1 or variations of that temporary seasonal visas. The parents do it for several years, okay? Some of them do it for their whole lives, and they keep going back and then coming back. And it's because business wants them back.
Yeah.
If you Donald Trump has a bunch of these at his country clubs, and they're great employees for 7 months of the year. Then they have to go back, and then they come back and back and back. But they know where they're coming back because they have a great job, and they can survive the other months of the year on the money they have made in the United States, in their own home country. But, and this is in sad irony, the superior American education has an unintended consequence. And by no means am I saying let's not educate them or let's make education worse.
Yeah, that's
the parents get kids over here that are of school age because the children can come with them on the H-1B because it would be inhumane to separate the family. And they come. My sister, dear, I lost her at a terribly young age, but she was a teacher of migrant children principally in California. And she said it was heartbreaking because they were so eager to learn. And then the school would tell my sister, well, that Roberto won't be there next week because he has to go back with his father.
Exactly. And the families are always living under this fear and of being raided and getting, taken and dumped back over the border too.
Yes, but the point is that they legally go back and they legally come back and they do this ping pong for a few years. And then finally the parents say, you know what, Miguel, the wife says, why don't we take a chance and stay, not go back? Because the children are so much better off here with this school. And you can get a job. You can get a job because the farmer down the road needs help. You probably can't stay at the big hotel that you're working at because they'll know you're not documented. But maybe they'll keep you even, and some do. And over the many years, that's how we got to this 8 to 10 to 15 million population. Now that's the group that is, quote, living in the shadows. And let's just say you have a gentleman named Roberto who takes this chance and doesn't go back. And he never gets caught. And he is living in the shadows because if he gets caught, he will be sent back or could be. Here's where it really gets complicated. He marries Harriet, a native-born American in Chicago. They start raising children. They're living, though, in the shadow because if he gets caught, there's going to be family separation. So right now, the threat, hopefully it's just campaign rhetoric, but with this guy who knows, he's going to deport, mass deportations of undocumented illegals. It's going to be this population I'm describing.
Right.
It's going to be family separation on steroids. It's going to be, there were 6,000 children, maybe a little more, separated from their parents in the mess that I write about in Sailing. This will be 6 million families if he really did that. And it'll have grandparents weeping their eyes out because their grandchildren are being sent back, mainly to Mexico, that most of the undocumented that he would be affecting. But not only that, a lot from Colombia. Um,
And
uh,
they're not, and they may not get to stay there either. And what I'm looking at
yeah,
too is, and I keep trying to tell people, it's like, okay, we have situations where countries are, I don't know, there's these dictator things going on. It's like the rise of the dictatorship around the world, right?
authoritarianism.
It is really happening, and it's not just here. And many countries are, England is looking at what's happening with immigration policy. It's happening everywhere. But we have one big thing, and it's called climate change.
Yes.
And let me tell you, you worried about it now, everyone. I'm trying to say you could be the next person not knowing where to go. If you look at the natural disasters we're having right now in this country, I
Oh,
mean, we've dodged 4 hurricanes since July on the road. As everything going up ended, we're very lucky and blessed to not be where a lot of our friends are, sitting with no water or electricity right now, and evacuated out of their places still. So I'm trying to say, what's going to happen? Some people are not going to rebuild. They're going to move. We know we
oh,
had to move from wildfires in California.
oh, yes.
This is
Well,
going to happen.
I'm sitting, Lisa, in a brand new home that I just had constructed.
Mhm.
And it's very comfortable. I know my children haven't seen it yet because I just moved in last week.
Everybody watch
They're
this.
they're going to
We get to
love
see
it.
a little bit.
And if my grandson, who's 10 years, he's 12, if he says to me, Grandpa, I like this house. I'm going to build one just like it when I grow up, and I'm going to build it right next door to you. I'm going to say, not on your life, Xavier.
Mm-mm.
Because when
Yeah,
you have enough money to build a house this nice, the ocean will be right here. You will not be
exactly.
able to do it. And I
Hmm.
feel a little bad that even I did it. But
Hmm.
if I didn't give away as much money as I do, I'd feel terribly guilty building a house
Yeah.
where nobody should build a house. Although I
Well,
am 1 mile from the ocean,
that's
but
cool.
the elevation of my house is only 12 feet above sea.
Mm,
And at the rate of climate change,
yeah.
there's only a couple of streets between me and the ocean, and they'll be covered up in 50 years, I'm certain,
Oh,
unless we get our handle on it, and we can get our handle on it.
but as we go through all this authoritarian, I call it dictatorship, fascism, all of this going on around the world, and this arguing and drama over the immigration, when it's like, hey, you know what, it may be you moving, like suddenly everyone's going to move back to California. Everybody left California because it got too expensive. Next thing you know, North Carolina is going to be in California. I don't think that's going to work, but
Yeah.
but you know what I
Well,
mean.
you're so
It's
right.
getting weird though.
Authoritarianism is at the root of so many problems, and at the root of the inability to solve the problems.
Hmm.
Because authoritarianism does not, it's almost the antithesis of the common good.
Of liberty, what
It's
happened
for
to freedom,
me and
justice, and
my,
liberty
it's
for
for
all?
me and my buddies. If I'm
Hmm.
Vladimir Putin, I don't
Hmm.
care about the common Russian. I care about myself. And when we have leadership and leadership models that don't strive all of the time for the common good,
Mm.
you don't solve problems that are facing everybody. You only solve the problems that are facing you yourself. I'm sure
Mm.
Vladimir Putin, if he were in this country as a dictator, he would have some Rocky Mountain estate and he wouldn't give a damn about flooding
Right.
because he would say, that's where I can go. But well, it's been so interesting. Do you have anything more you want to ask me
I
about?
think we could, like, we could change the world if you just keep writing more books.
Well, I tend to keep writing them.
That's awesome. I mean, I think being from the attorney background and being able to have this kind of that background to understand the laws and put them into a way that we can consume them. Because I mean, we do a show, attorney Ward Heinrichs, and once in a while I say, look, we got to go back to our legalese because none of
Yeah.
us know what any of this means. And so he's like, I said, I can't even pronounce that.
Well,
Pronounce it. What's that?
I,
And it's true. It's too hard for our brains. The fine
well,
print. None of us
yeah,
want to read it.
I would say that my legal career um, had two impacts on my ability to be a writer. One was I was a corporate lawyer working for a very large company, and I became the chief lawyer eventually. But
The head dude.
I
Yeah.
always wanted to be a writer. But because I always wanted to be a writer, and because I was writing for very intelligent readers, other, well-educated scientists and business people and judges, I took great care, and I never ever wrote something once, ever in my life. I don't think even an email. I always went back and read it, redo it, make it really well. So that was good discipline. So I never have any trouble with the work part of this. The second thing, though, was it enabled me, the kind of law I practice and for whom I practice, I got a lot of travel. And I got to a lot of countries and cities. And
That's cool.
I didn't get to Honduras. So to write about Honduras, I spent days researching Honduras, not just maps, although they're very helpful, but lots of historical references, videos.
I was going to say, yeah, this age,
Yeah,
yeah.
there still are people that go on vacation to Honduras. Now, a lot of them are from Honduras
And
and,
expats.
and expats. Oh yeah, in the capital city there that they all call Tegas because it's so hard, long 5-syllable. Tegucigalpa
Oh,
is,
you go.
I think I think I got it. It's only 1.3 million people, but it is the largest city. And the videos of it were just amazing to me. So I try to be very accurate in my descriptions of buildings and locations and hotels. But as a lawyer, my travel took me around to Stockholm, which I write about a lot in my other books, and London, which I write about, other cities. But anyway, I just am so grateful to you, Lisa, for.
I'm glad you're here. And I do want to say this, lawyers make the best authors, it's really true. And I think, I was talking about that with Ward and other lawyers, and they all go, well, if you don't know how to write as a lawyer, you're not winning. I mean, because it's like and you have to be a politician a little bit too, right? I mean, it's like it's all kind of connected in a salesperson, and so you have to sell a story no matter what.
And I think a good lawyer does try to see both sides of every story.
Yeah. Oh, and if you don't, you're not going to make it.
And so I try to do that with all of my characters. All of them have flaws. None of them are right all of the time. Even the evil people in my books, there's something positive that I can find about them.
But that's natural. That's natural. Well, everyone, the book is out now. You got to go get it. It's called Sailing for Grace, makes sense, right? And go to author josephbauer.com, and that's Bauer, josephbauer.com. And the link is in the episode notes, so you can check that out there. But go get it, support authors, and enjoy the read, and pass it on to your friends before Election Day.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Joseph. It's been a pleasure. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Big Blend Radio's Toast to the Art Show. Please keep up with us at bigblendradio.com and keep up with Big Blend magazines at blendradioandtv.com.